Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. It started with an argument, not loud, not angry, but quiet in the way that things fall apart when love tries to hold on too tight. Elena, a graceful white Russian woman in her early 30s, stood at the kitchen counter, her hands still damp from washing dishes, her eyes locked on the man who claimed he couldn't stay. David, her American husband, was packing his suitcase slowly, methodically, like someone walking away from something precious, but necessary. "It's not that I don't love you," he said, his voice low, as if even the walls could judge him. "It's that I don't know how to be here anymore." But then something strange happened. Just as the weight of goodbyes started to press down, he paused. Their eyes met. The kind of moment that doesn't need music to feel like a scene from a movie. He pulled off his shirt, not in passion, but in vulnerability, as if showing her his bare skin was the last way to say something he couldn't find the words for. That gesture, simple yet loaded, changed everything. This wasn't just a story about a marriage at the edge. This was about two people from two different worlds, an elegant, emotionally deep woman from Russia and a grounded, emotionally distant man from the United States, trying to bridge the space between love and fear, between staying and leaving. Their relationship had once been the picture of balance, friendship, laughter, intimacy, and deep conversations that lasted till dawn. But now, silence filled the spaces where words used to live. Still love? Love hadn't left. It was just hiding under layers of unspoken feelings and misunderstood intentions. The night he said he was leaving, it should have ended there. But when he stood in front of her like that, shirtless, not seductive but raw, not trying to impress, but just to be, Elena saw something in his eyes. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was longing. Or maybe it was that last spark of a love worth fighting for. She didn't move toward him. She didn't say anything. But her breath caught, her heart pounded, and the air around them felt like it might shatter. And just like that, the story changed. Not with a kiss, not with tears, but with the silence that came before a decision. A moment where two hearts stood still, waiting. Will he stay or will he walk off for good? Will she forgive him or will she let him go? Or maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. A friendship reborn from ashes, a love rediscovered, or a quiet goodbye that would haunt them both forever. What do you think happened next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did Elena hold him back? Or did she let him walk away? Vote in the poll and let's see who really believes in second chances. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss part 2 of this very interesting, loving story. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of their bed, staring at the suitcase that remained half-zipped, as if the decision to leave hadn't fully matured. David was in the other room, shirtless still, lying on the couch like a stranger who had once belonged. The silence between them wasn't cold, it was full of words neither of them dared to say. Every moment they spent not speaking felt like a test, and neither wanted to be the one to break first. Their love story had started like a scene from a dream. He had met her during a business trip in Moscow, and what was supposed to be a casual dinner turned into nights of deep conversation and quiet walks under city lights. Elena wasn't just beautiful, she was thoughtful, grounded, with a kind of sadness in her eyes that made David want to understand her. And David, he was different from the men Elena had known. Calm, curious, emotionally slow to open, but when he did, it was real. Their chemistry was undeniable, even when they didn't speak the same language perfectly. What they lacked in vocabulary, they made up for in connection. But now, here they were. Married, yet living like guests in the same house. What had gone wrong? Maybe it was the cultural gap, or maybe it was how David slowly stopped sharing his thoughts, building quiet walls instead of bridges. Maybe it was Elena's fear of losing herself, her identity, her dreams, in a relationship that felt like it was always demanding more and giving less. Still, neither had cheated, yelled, or disrespected the other. That was what made it harder. The absence of drama made the slow unraveling feel even more painful. Earlier that week, David had said, "I think we're better as friends now." The words crushed her, not because she didn't care about him, but because she did, maybe too much. But friends? After everything? After nights holding each other through storms and sharing stories they never told anyone else? That wasn't just love, it was something deeper, something most couples search a lifetime for. And yet, in that kitchen, when he stood in front of her with nothing to hide, literally and emotionally, something unspoken passed between them. Not closure, not forgiveness, just a question, a possibility. Could two people who had nearly lost each other still find their way back? Before the sun rose, Elena walked slowly into the living room. She didn't say a word. She just stood there, watching him sleep with his back half-turned toward her. Her hand hovered near his shoulder, uncertain. And right then, he opened his eyes. David's eyes met Elena's in the quiet dimness of early morning. There was no alarm, no startle, just that strange peace that comes when two people are exhausted from pretending not to care. He didn't say anything, neither did she. The space between them, though just a few feet, felt like miles. Her hand stayed in the air for a second longer before she let it fall to her side. She didn't touch him. Maybe she was afraid if she did, he'd disappear for real. Elena turned and walked into the kitchen, where leftover tea from last night still sat on the counter. She poured it out slowly, watching the water swirl into the drain. Everything about their home felt half-finished now, photos still on the wall, his shoes by the door, her perfume bottle next to his shaving cream. It was like they were both still living in the shell of a marriage that didn't know if it was ending or transforming. David finally sat up, rubbing his face. "You didn't sleep?" he said quietly. "No," she replied without turning around. Her voice was calm but tight, like she was holding her breath. He stood, grabbing a shirt from the back of the chair, but didn't put it on. Instead, he leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "I meant it, Elena. I don't think we're okay. I don't know how to fix it." "Maybe it's not something to fix," she said, turning to face him now. "Maybe it's something we're supposed to feel and decide from there." Their conversation had circled this space before. Feelings, distance, misunderstandings that had built slowly over time. But this time felt different. There was no shouting, no accusations. Just two people trying to figure out if love alone was enough. A subplot began to rise here. Elena had been receiving messages from her best friend back home in Russia, urging her to come visit, to take time for herself, maybe even stay a while. Her mother was getting older, and her younger sister was planning to get married in the fall. There was a pull in Elena's heart, one that whispered maybe it wasn't just David who felt like he was disappearing. David had secrets too. Not infidelity, but fear of not being good enough, of failing at something as deep as marriage with someone who deserved more. His job had become a stressor, and he had begun thinking about taking a position in another state, something that would offer a fresh start, but also force a decision neither of them was ready to make. They both stood in the kitchen, lost in thoughts they weren't brave enough to share. The room filled with quiet noise, birds outside, the hum of the refrigerator, a clock ticking slowly, marking every second of unspoken tension. And then, he said it again, softer this time. "I don't want to hurt you, Elena." She looked up. "Then don't. What do you think will happen if Elena decides to leave first? Or if David takes the new job without telling her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should they fight for each other or walk away before more damage is done? The air between them stayed still, like even the room itself was waiting to see what would happen next. David finally moved, slowly walking past her and picking up his half-packed suitcase. He zipped it shut this time. The sound cut through the silence like a final word, but no one had said anything. Elena didn't stop him. She didn't cry. But inside, her heart felt like it had cracked just enough to let in the fear she'd been pushing down for weeks. He set the suitcase by the door, then sat down on the edge of the couch. His eyes didn't leave her. He was searching her face for something: permission, forgiveness, maybe a sign that she still believed in them. She was searching his too. But all either of them found was doubt. The kind of doubt that comes not from lack of love, but from love that's been worn thin by time and silence. "I had a dream last night," she finally said, her voice almost too soft to hear. "You were standing in the doorway. But you didn't say anything. You just looked at me like I wasn't real anymore." David leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "That's how I've felt for months, Elena. Like I'm here, but not really here." She nodded slowly. "I know. I felt it too." Just then, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen. A message from her sister. "Mama asked if you're coming home this summer. She misses you." It was like a quiet call to another life, one that had no David in it. One that didn't hurt so much. David noticed her reaction, and without asking, he stood. "You should go. Maybe that's what we both need. Space. Time." His words weren't cruel. They weren't even cold. But they hit harder than any fight ever could. Elena didn't answer right away. She walked over to the window, looking out at the empty street, her arms wrapped around herself like armor. The silence stretched again, thick and unresolved. Behind her, David was still standing, watching her, waiting. And in that moment, right before anything was decided, everything hung in the balance. A heartbeat too long, a word too late, a love still alive, but barely breathing. What do you think will happen next? Should Elena take that flight back home? Will David let her walk away without trying one last time? Drop your predictions in the comments. Let's see who saw the twist coming. The stillness in the room was about to break, but not in the way either of them expected. Elena stayed by the window, staring into the pale morning when David's phone buzzed on the table. Once, twice, 3 times. Something about the rhythm made her turn. He didn't move to check it. He didn't even look at it. But she did. She crossed the room and picked it up without asking. On the screen, a message preview lit up. "Flight confirmed. See you in Denver." Elena's stomach dropped. She didn't say anything at first, just held the phone in her hand, reading it again like it might change. David saw her expression shift and stood straighter, but didn't speak. It wasn't what it looked like, not cheating, not betrayal, but it was something worse in a way. A plan made without her. A decision already taken. A part of him already gone. "You bought a ticket," she said slowly. "For Denver." David exhaled, pressing his fingers to his temples. "It's just a job interview. I didn't want to talk about it until I knew if it was real." "And now it's real?" she asked, holding the phone out toward him like proof. He didn't take it. "I thought maybe a new city, a new role. It could help me figure things out." "Without me," she whispered. "That wasn't the plan." "Then what was the plan, David?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you already left." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, David flinched. The emotional distance between them was no longer metaphorical, it was becoming physical. Different cities, different futures, separate choices. Elena didn't cry, but her hands trembled as she set the phone down on the table, slowly, carefully, like it was something dangerous. But then came the second twist. Elena turned and walked into the bedroom. When she came back, she was holding her own suitcase. It had been packed for days, hidden in the back of the closet. A just-in-case bag. Her eyes met his, and something silent passed between them. Not anger, not even hurt, just reality. "You're not the only one with a flight booked," she said, her voice quiet. David blinked, stunned. "What?" "I'm leaving too," she said, breathing through it. "Not forever. But I need to see home. I need to remember who I am without all of this." Now they stood across the room from each other, both packed, both planning to leave, both hoping the other might ask them to stay. But neither said it. And with every second of silence, that hope thinned. What would you do if both people were ready to walk away, yet neither truly wanted to? Should one of them stop the other? Or is this their last moment together before everything changes forever? Comment below with your thoughts. What twist do you think is coming next? David took one slow step toward Elena, his hand tightening slightly around the handle of his suitcase. "So we're both leaving," he said, not as a question, but more like a truth he didn't want to admit. Elena nodded. "Maybe we both thought the other would try to stop us." David's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "I was waiting for a sign. Something that said we were still worth fighting for." She looked at him then, her eyes softer than they'd been in days. "Sometimes the sign is silence, David." And we both got loud with ours. A pause hung between them, so heavy that it felt like the next move would either break them or save them. Then, as if pulled by instinct, David crossed the room and stood in front of her. "I don't want to go to Denver without you," he whispered. "But I don't know if we can fix this." Elena dropped her suitcase. The sound echoed like an answer. "Maybe we don't need to fix it. Maybe we just need to start again, as two people who already know how much it hurts to lose each other." And just as David reached for her hand, a knock came at the door. They froze. Neither moved at first. The knock came again, firmer this time. David walked over, opened the door cautiously, and there stood a delivery man holding an envelope. "Are you Elena Volkova?" the man asked. She stepped forward. "Yes." The man handed it to her, nodded, and left. She opened it slowly, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a letter from the embassy. Her long-awaited approval for dual residency had come through. A process they'd started together months ago, then forgotten when things got rough. Her eyes filled with tears. David looked over her shoulder and read the words too. "It means you don't have to choose," he said softly. "You can be here. You can be there." Elena looked up at him. "And so can you." It was in that moment, when the decision had already been made, when goodbyes had been packed, that fate opened a different door. Not one either of them expected, but one they had unknowingly built together. But then came the final twist. Elena's phone buzzed again. This time, a video message from her sister. It opened automatically, and in it, their mother was holding a small box. "Tell Elena the ring is here." Her father said it's hers now. "It's time." David looked confused. "Ring?" Elena closed her eyes for a second, then whispered, "It's the ring my father gave my mother. The one she said I should only wear when I knew who my forever was." What do you think she'll do now, with love back on the table and a family legacy waiting in another country? Drop your predictions in the comments. David reached out and gently took the letter from Elena's hands, setting it aside on the table next to her suitcase. The quiet between them now felt different, no longer heavy with fear or tension, but light with something they hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. The past few hours had peeled away everything extra. No more pride. No more waiting for the other to speak first. Just two people finally seeing each other for who they really were. "You said the ring was for when you found your forever," David said softly, watching her closely. She gave him a small, tearful smile. "I think I've always known. I just got scared that forever meant staying stuck." "But maybe it doesn't," he replied. "Maybe forever means growing, changing, choosing each other again and again." Elena stepped forward, closer now, her hand resting lightly on his chest. "So, do we unpack or take both our bags to Moscow?" David laughed quietly, the first real laugh in days. "Let's take the bags." But this time, not to run away, to move forward. They didn't speak much after that. They didn't need to. The choice was made not just to stay or go, but to start over together. They would go to Russia, meet her family, hold that little box in their hands, and decide what kind of future they wanted to build. Together, with eyes wide open. Later that afternoon, David canceled his flight to Denver. Elena messaged her sister, "We're coming." And as they closed the apartment door behind them, hands laced, suitcases rolling quietly over the floor. The weight that had filled their home was gone. It wasn't a perfect love story, but it was real. And sometimes, real is the most romantic thing of all. What do you think about how it all ended? Did Elena and David make the right choice? Would you have stayed or gone? Comment below and let us know if you'd like a sequel. Maybe the next chapter takes place in Moscow.